Okay, what we need to look at next is this idea of what is called rationalizing the denominator. And as we're dealing with fractions that have radicals, there's a really important rule that basically says no radical should include a fraction, and no fraction should have a radical on the denominator. So really, I think of this as rationalizing the denominator means no denominators in the radical and no radicals in the denominator. So what happens is we need to somehow change this number to get rid of this. So the way that we're going to do that is, remember, we don't want to multiply it by something just at random. We don't want to change the value. We just want to change what it looks like. And so what we can multiply this by is the square root of 2 divided by the square root of 2. And you'll remember anytime we have a number over itself, it's really just 1. So we're not changing the value, we're just changing what it looks like. And now what happens is 1 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 2. And the square root of 2 times itself gets rid of that radical. And now you'll see our answer. It still has a denominator, it still has a radical, but that radical is not in the denominator. It cannot have this number to be a radical. Okay, so here's another problem. Again, we have that square root in our denominator, and this idea says we cannot have any denominators in our radical or radicals in our denominator. So we need to get rid of this. So this time, we're going to multiply it by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. You'll notice we always multiply it by something that is the same as that denominator. We want that square root to go away in the denominator. So as we multiply this time we're going to get 3 times the square root of 3, right? We're multiplying straight across, divided by 3. This times itself gets rid of that square root. So now our answer is 3 times the square root of 3 divided by 3. Make sure you simplify, right? We have the same thing on the top and the bottom. So our answer is really going to come out to the square root of 3. Okay, here's our next example. Again, we want to get rid of that square root that's on the denominator. And so we're going to multiply this by the square root of 2 over the square root of 2, always making sure that those denominators are the same so that we get rid of that square root. So as we multiply these fractions, we multiply straight across. 8 times the square root of 2 over 2. Make sure that you simplify. And the way that you can think about this is remembering, well, it's really 8 over 2 times the square root of 2. And we can look at this and remember that that's 4. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So our final answer, once we've rationalized and simplified, should be 4 times the square root of 2. We no longer have a radical in our denominator or a denominator in our radical. Okay, here's our final example. Now remember, our goal is to get rid of this. So we're going to multiply this by the square root of 3 divided by the square root of 3, which at first gets us 24 times the square root of 3 over 3. Make sure you simplify that, right? 24 divided by 3 is 8 times the square root of 3. Make sure that your final answer is simplified and also has no fraction in the radical and no radical, no denominator in the radical and no radical in the denominator.